My people, welcome back to our classroom. It's our pleasure to have brother Kwame Sarfo-Mensah once again. He's not new to the platform. If you know, you know. This is the math specialist. This is the CEO of Identity Talk Consulting, Mr. Sierra Leone. That's where he's posted up right now. So the fact that we're able to get him on, man, like it's a big deal, people. Major sacrifice to be able to make this happen in terms of the time difference and whatnot. And Kwame always has a lot going on, including his writing, which is good, which is impactful. And he has a new book on the horizon, likely in November. So stay tuned for that. We're going to unpack a little bit about the book here today. Kwame, welcome back to our classroom.
Hey, man, hombre, what's going on, man?
I'm just here. I'm here trying to relearn. I'm learning to relearn, my man.
Uh, my guy. Nah, it's always good to be back in our classroom. You already know how much love I got for you and Lorena and what y'all do. So it's always fam, you know what I mean?
Hey, the love is mutual, man. You're one of the few platforms that I see out there, few individuals that I see out there just consistently opening up a space for people to come and share their expertise, share their writings, share their insight. And so I love what you're doing with Identity Talk. You're certainly an inspiration for us and appreciate your grind.
Likewise, man, the feeling's mutual.
Well, you have a new book coming out, and certainly last time we were on, we were talking about math and all types of math related questions and conversation that was affirming me as a math learner. But this is going to be a different type of affirmation because your book, the one on the horizon, is learning to relearn, supporting
Yes.
identity in a culturally affirming classroom. Excited about that for you. I'm sure you're excited. And your book
Elated.
discusses the concept of schooling versus education. I love it because that's something I think about, talk about, and I think about the t-shirts and what brother Babu Blake puts out, where he's always talking about school versus education. And so, love for you to elaborate on the difference and why it's crucial for educators to focus on educating rather than merely schooling.
So first off, thank you for that question because it's an important one. And when you think about schooling, so in a nutshell, schooling is all about how well you can comply to protocols, rules, and different guidelines that are set by the school, organization, or entity that you're in. So in the case of K to 12, for those who have gone through it like you and I, you know that every school year you have a new teacher. Usually you start off the first week with a set of rules that the teacher tells you to follow. And usually there's no input from the students. These are rules that are set from the beginning before you even step foot in the classroom door.
Right. So these are not
And
classroom norms that we've created as a community.
no, that's not co-created at all. These are things that the teacher has already set in her mind and has decided this is how the classroom should function, regardless of who steps into that space. Now, as you go through K to 12 and you get into college, and we went to college and we know how that is. Schooling goes to another level. It's not so much about how smart you are. It's really about how well you can comply.
Mm. So you got
So,
to be a master of compliance
master of
in
compliance.
order
So,
for you to achieve.
perfect example. You go into a class, professor gives you the syllabus. Usually there is a breakdown of how you're going to be graded for this class. And let's say that 20% is participation. So in your mind, you're thinking, all right, 20%. So that means every single time a question is asked by the professor, I gotta raise my hand to let them know that I am engaged. Even though we know as educators, that's not the only way engagement is manifested. You could be the quietest person and still be engaged.
True.
You know what I mean? But at the time, as an 18, 19-year-old, that was my thought process. If I can answer enough questions from the professor, if I can contribute a whole lot during class, at least a few times every class, that's going to get me up to that 20%. And then on top of that, if I go to the professor's office hours, that's going to let the professor know that I'm even more invested in the class than the average student.
Mm.
So this is the thought process I'm having. None of this has anything to do with academic prowess or anything like that. This is about, well, how do I manipulate the system in order to get what I need,
Mm.
right?
You know, I got a
So
song that comes to mind for this.
come on
Politics as
now.
usual.
Uh, quoting Hove, of course.
You
Yeah,
know,
man.
you politic to navigate the system. Like,
That's what it
hey,
is.
I'm a tip the professor's bias in my favor.
And yeah. And when I think about my own journey, I graduated from Temple University 2 times. So I'm proud of that. But I'll also be honest when I say I didn't graduate because I was the smartest guy.
Mm.
I was a math major all throughout my years there, and my final GPA was a 2.3 in my major. But because I worked hard and I took advantage of the office hours, because I had good relationships with all my professors, and I went to the tutoring center every week to get help with certain problems I had in math, that's why I was able to get by. And there were certain classes that I should have failed, but because the professor curved the grade, that was my safety valve. That was my saving grace. So schooling is something that presents itself in different ways. And we even think about legacies, right? Legacies who go to college and are able to get in without having the most stellar academic record.
Mm.
That's because they have daddies or mothers who are trustees of the university. So they're able to talk to whoever and they get in that way. But schooling is something that we've all been victims of in some shape or form, whether it's you walking in a straight line, you sitting in a row, and you're in a row in the classroom, um, cell phone use, making sure your cell phones are put away. That's always a big conversation. Uh, Uniform policies, zero tolerance policies. There's so many examples. There's so much time focusing on those things and not enough time actually teaching students about things that are relevant to their lives, things that they need in order to be the best version of themselves.
Right,
And
and
this
we're
is,
seeing some
yeah,
shifts. We're seeing some
yeah,
shifts where
for sure.
many young people are not going the traditional route because they've concluded like one, it costs way too much money. So I'm
Come
gonna
on
be,
now.
I'm gonna be in debt for how long? For a career that I'm gonna make how much money? But
Yeah,
you also have folks who are starting to understand like, wait, I can continue to educate myself through these alternative means, however we define that, right? Whether it's through YouTube and uh, Google courses and certifications. There are major corporations now who are offering opportunities that if you pursue certifications through however they lay it out for you to get there,
mhm.
that's not the
That's right.
traditional college route, that
Hmm.
will suffice as opposed to a 4 year degree. And listen, I'm not discouraging anybody from going the traditional route. Obviously, we did that. Uh,
Yes.
but I think folks have to be very discerning about what their aims are and the best way to get there, especially because higher ed in many ways, I hate to say this, but in many ways it feels like a hustle. And I'm not pulling this out of thin air. You know, I worked in high schools, I worked with youngsters, and part of my job at a couple of the stops I was at was supporting them in identifying the right fit in terms of higher ed as they were
Mhm.
moving on from high school. And
Yes,
we would always get to that point where like, listen, I know you want to go to XYZ University, but
that's
that
right.
mug right there is going to put you in debt for the rest of your life. Why don't you consider going to the state school? For some of my kids, it was like, why don't you go to community, do community college for 2 years, stack your
That's
paper,
right.
and then go to a 4 year school. The first 2 years, you're doing all the same basic courses anyway. Save yourself some money, right? We would have these conversations. And I'm talking about like, a decade ago. Never mind how much it costs now. Uh,
Oh my.
so again, nobody's discouraging our young people from pursuing 4 year traditional route. Hey,
Hmm.
if that's your road, take it by all means. For some people, it has to be that because there's a certain career path that they're on. But
Right.
that's not for everybody. And more importantly, as we're talking about here, have an understanding about the difference between education and schooling. We want people to fall in love with being educated, right? We want people to fall in love with learning. And I feel like that's part of what you're getting at with your book. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to
Yes,
relearn,
sir.
like shake things up so that you don't think like, oh, this is the only way. That way that you hated. I'm
Hmm.
not saying everybody hated the way the education system's laid out. For plenty of people worked out, they loved it, wonderful. If that was you, hey, God bless you. I can't say that was necessarily my experience. Even though there were moments, there were periods of times where like, yeah, I had the right teacher, right fit, but in terms of like the overall experience, nah, I think things could have been done much differently. And it makes me think about the passion for teaching, and in moments in which I felt my passion was waning a bit. And I know that you got at that in your book where you're talking about, teaching started out, this is a quote from your book, teaching started
That's
out
right.
as an addictive passion, but
Hmm.
over time became a job that I dreaded doing. Ooh, I think some people, I think some people can relate. I think some people can
Yeah,
relate. Can you build on that?
sure. And my story is not unique to other educator stories. So when I talk about the addictive passion, I'm talking about the romanticization
Mm,
of teaching. Think about when we were growing up, Roberto. We had those teachers who would stay in the schools for 25, 30 years and would teach
facts.
multiple generations of families. And um, this is like pre NCLB. So they didn't have to worry about the pressures of students performing on state tests, even though state tests existed back in my case, 90s, late 80s, 90s, right? So when I first became an educator in the late, early 2010s, I thought that I was going to be that teacher. I
Mm,
wanted to be that teacher who was going to be a mainstay at this one school for multiple years and teach multiple generations of families and build a legacy in that way. And that's how I approached the job in the beginning. I was naive. I was caught by the savior complex bug a little bit. I will
mm,
acknowledge that because I felt like I had a chance to really make a tremendous impact on young people. And I saw colleagues who were sacrificing time away from their families, time away from their loved ones, time away from their friends to do this work. So I assumed that that was how I was supposed to operate. I thought that was the norm. So I decided to adopt these toxic, unhealthy behaviors. And as a result of doing that, I started to see the ugly side of what it means to be Black educator
Mm.
and what it means to be invisibly taxed because of the fact that I was a Black educator. So I saw what that was, and I ended up losing my job after my first year of teaching because
Wow.
of politics.
Oof.
Um, and I've shared this on other platforms, but I'll just share the abridged version. So basically, I was at a charter school in Philadelphia, a very prestigious charter school, and I didn't have an instructional coach the entire year. I didn't have any evaluations. I didn't have any observations the entire year. It wasn't until April, after we
Yo,
had done our state testing, that I got my very first of any of those. And it
that
was
that that
done by,
happened to me. That happened to me also. But
yo,
go ahead.
bro, it was done by a board member who was a retired principal, had never visited my classroom before,
What?
had no context of who I was beyond my name and who my kids were. She just popped in one day, sat in the corner of the room for about 30 minutes, and was taking low inference notes while I was doing my thing with students. Now, mind you, it's April. We had gone all this time preparing for this state test. State test is over. We
And
trying to
they're like,
chill.
yeah, yeah,
Like it's over. The state test is a Super Bowl. So these
right.
kids are not as focused as they would be if it was, let's say, October, November, and we still on that grind. So that's when she came into my room. And it wasn't a case where kids were misbehaving. I mean, the kids were fine. We were doing some light work, but nothing super rigorous. But from that one observation came a failed evaluation, which then got to my principal's lap. And it was around this time where I had signed a contract to come back for another year. So this is April. Now, fast forward to June, a week into the summer vacation, I get a call from my principal. Now I'm back in Connecticut visiting family. He's calling me from Connecticut. He's calling me while I'm there saying, hey, are you able to come back to Philly? Because I got to talk to you. We
What?
got to meet.
Come on, man.
So I end up cutting my vacation short to go to this meeting in Philly. I go to my principal's office and he slides the pink slip and says, hey man, we gotta unfortunately we got to rescind your contract and let you go. And I'm like, really? Like, how? Because I just told you I went a whole year without any observations, nothing, no negative reports from parents. My colleagues were raving about me. The principal who fired me was raving about me. And I'm asking him, yo, why? And he was like, because, well, the board said we have to let you go. Sorry, it wasn't my decision. So basically, I was a scapegoat because it was either going to be him or it was going to be me, at least how I saw it. Because he messed up because he couldn't even look me in the eye.
Wow.
He couldn't
Wow.
look me in the eye. And man, to have to experience that as a first year teacher
Mm.
was devastating. So, so the addictive passion comes from what I mentioned in the beginning, how we romanticize being a teacher, all the beauty that comes with it, decorating the room and,
Hmm.
you know, doing all the stuff that you see on like, I don't know, all those
Pinterest.
the Pinterest pages. But
Wow.
then fast forward to year 9. Now I'm in Boston. I'm a Boston public schools teacher now at this point, teaching 7th, 8th grade math. I'm at a school that's a pretty decent school. My colleagues are super dope, but I got a principal who just wasn't engaged with the students the way I felt she should be. And I just felt like if you are a really strong teacher and you are somebody that vocalized issues and injustices that were happening, not just to students, but even to other colleagues, you end up getting to more trouble than someone that just shut their mouths and kept it moving. So I ended up being that person near the tail end of my time at my school. And it caused me to be bumping heads with my principal. And I also saw that there were colleagues who just weren't as invested in this work as I was. Because my naive self thought, well, shoot, if we're all teachers, we all should be believing in the same things and the same morals and principles. But I found out that there's some who just want to come in and leave as soon as the kids leave. Not to say that you shouldn't do that from time to time. You definitely have to for your mental health. You shouldn't be staying till late every day. But there were some who never, ever stayed behind. Or you could tell they just were going through the motions.
Right.
They
It
could
was a
care less
job.
about what's going on with the kids. You know what I mean? It's just a job.
It's a
And
job.
it was more than that for me. And I wanted people to have the same passion as I did. But you realize that not everybody is on that tip. And that used to frustrate me. And sometimes I'll acknowledge that the way my frustration would come out would manifest in ways that probably weren't the best way to approach it as I reflect. But I was at that stage where I knew that this was not working. And thankfully, my wife got a job offer to work with Peace Corps, which meant that I could resign from my job and move abroad,
Mm.
which is where I've been for the past 5 years.
Man. Yeah, those type of situations could definitely take the life and enthusiasm out of educators.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate because we end up losing a lot of good folks along the way. And sometimes there are people who are doing this work and so invested in the children and pushing things forward, but they
Mm-hmm.
feel alone, right? You feel like you're on an island, and makes me think about the notion of allyship and co-conspiratorship, which you talk about in your book.
Yes, yes.
Can you explain what this transition involves and why it's essential for meaningful change? Because I think when we're in spaces where we are able to identify co-conspirators, then it can inspire us to sustain our efforts in a
Mhm.
particular place and with a particular initiative. So,
Yeah.
yeah, can you expound on that?
So when I look at allyship and co-conspirator, right? Those two terms, I think there are some folks who have a tendency to interchange those two terms. Even though there are a lot of intersection between them, they're not exactly the same. And here's what I mean by that. So when I think about allyship, and this is my interpretation of it, allyship is when you have a colleague in your school who empathizes with what it is to be a person of color. Like they empathize with you. They see that there's issues that you're dealing with as a result of your racial or cultural background. They're like, yes, I feel you. I'm with you. They may wear a shirt that has certain causes on there. They may wear a Black Lives Matter shirt. They may wear a pride flag shirt. They may have a sign on their classroom door that says everyone is welcome, right? To show their support. But that's their ceiling. Nothing goes beyond that. Now, when I talk about a co-conspirator, now I'm talking about somebody who not only does those things, but now they're taking a step further. They're going to go to the city halls with you to speak up. They're going to sign a petition on your behalf to bring light and injustice that's taken place. They're going to be a part of a committee that is focused on anti-bias, anti-racist issues, right? They're doing more than the minimum. So when I look at what allyship has become, in a lot of cases, over the past 5 years, we've had a whole bunch of folks buy books, listen to podcasts. There's all this intellectual property that's out there for folks to access, to learn about the isms and everything that goes on in the country at this stage. And what's amazing to me is that there are people who still expect you to give them more than what's already out there, right? Resources, everything. So, like, I'll give an example. Someone can buy a copy of Textured Teaching, do a whole book club on it. They'll, intellectualize. They'll have all these rich discussions and break down all the different terms in the book. And it's an incredible book. I have a copy myself. I know it's incredible. Shout out to Lorena.
Shout out to Lorena.
But it stops there. Okay, you've read the book, you've gained some new knowledge. Now, how do you make that actionable?
Application.
How do you apply that into your practice? How does that apply in your context as an educator? What's going to be your role in transformation? See, that's where the co-conspirating comes in. So when we talk about co-conspirators, when we talk about abolitionists, they're the ones who are like, yeah, we're going to read this book, but guess what? We're going to stand on business as well. We're going to be at the marches. We're going to be calling these legislators, these elected officials. We're going to make sure that people are voting, not just for the federal, but for the local elections, the city council meetings, your state senators. We are doing the whole gamut. And I think that's the part that people need to understand. There's another level to participation. There's another level that's required. At this stage, especially looking at this current presidential election, it's not enough for us to intellectualize and just read the books. That was okay in 2020 after George Floyd. Now
You
we
got to
got
do
to do
something.
more.
You got to
We
do
got to do
something.
more. We got to do more now. We got to start holding people accountable for what they say and their other actions.
Yeah, that's real talk. That's real talk. Accountability is essential. Application, right? Application. We're
Application.
not just
Yes.
consuming for the sake of consuming. We're consuming because we want to see change. We want to see transformation. As a matter of fact, you talk about transformation as it relates to what we want to see from our students, what we want to see in this world. And you
Mm-hmm.
assert that the purpose of learning to relearn is to support you in becoming an educator who challenges your students to discover how to participate in the transformation of the world. So,
That's right.
what are some practical steps that teachers can take to guide their students in the transformative process?
Well, before students can partake in the transformation of the world, they got to know who they are.
Mm.
That's the whole purpose of this book, is to help students build that positive self-image about who they are. That's why it says culturally affirming. We're affirming culture. we're also affirming a whole bunch of other identity markers as well. So there's a lot of talk about intersectionality. There is going to be some critical race theory influence throughout the book. I'm sorry, right wingers and conservatives. I'm gonna talk about it.
You trying to get banned.
You know what I'm saying? That'll be a badge of honor. But anyway, it's really about that, right? So if you were a student, I would want you to feel good about being a Dominican. I would want you to learn about the history of your country
Mm.
and the people who played a role in liberation. You know what I'm saying? I would want you to know about that because that's what's going to allow you to feel better about who you are. And when you think about the whitewashing that happens within our school curriculum, when you think about the book bans that are taking place still, the rampant censoring of anti-bias and anti-racist curriculum,
Right.
anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. I can go on and on. All these things contribute to identity-based harm. They contribute to identity-based harm. And when your identity is harmed, you now have a negative self-image. And if you don't have a negative self-image, and you're not learning about the history, the full history, not just the struggles, but also the times during your people's history where you're thriving.
Mm.
And within that history are lessons that are still applicable today to help us get to a place of liberation. Then how are you going to be able to be a transformer of this world if you don't feel good about yourself? If you don't have any concept of home, whatever home is for you. And that's what this book is about, man. This is really about getting teachers to understand the importance of identity affirmation and how it has to be connected to social emotional learning and how it has to be connected to all the other aspects of the instructional day. If the more we can get educators to understand that concept, the more we'll see students thriving and becoming the transformative people that we need them to be in this current world.
Yeah, and certainly for our youngsters, especially once they hit middle school, that search for identity is so present in their lives, in their minds. As a former middle school principal, definitely I saw it play out in a number of different ways in terms of how
Yeah,
they experienced the school environment, how they were navigating the world. And yeah, part of our duty is to support them along their journey, right? To give them space, give them the room to be able to engage with different content, learn new concepts, learn about new people, present history in a way that feeds their curiosity and is not just directed to them, right? Hence
that's
what we were
right.
talking about earlier in regards to schooling versus education.
That's right.
We want our scholars to feel empowered to find the information, to engage with different texts, and to make sense of it for themselves as they continue to navigate the world.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Really, really anticipating what I can pick up that's new from your book, what strategies I could apply to my own craft, what strategies I can share with other teachers that I'm leading when we're doing this work. Uh, as we conclude here, You know the drill. If you had
Yes.
an opportunity to have lunch with anybody dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Gosh, I don't remember who I said the last time,
Well, let's see if you
but
let's see if you're gonna repeat.
we'll see. I didn't watch that last episode. Let me see. Who do I want to have dinner with and why? There's so many people, man. Only one? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say Yolanda Silly Ruiz, Dr. Yolanda Silly Ruiz.
Dr. Ruiz, yeah, Celie Ruiz. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Um, so she is the forward writer for this book. She is someone whose work and identity has caused major shifts in my thinking as it pertains to what it means to be an educator, a culturally responsive educator. And whenever you hear her speak and you witness her speaking, it's always love, man.
Mhm.
Like I could sit here and listen to her all day. She just has the most loving and most magnetic presence about her that's captivating. Uh, and whenever we connect, it doesn't matter how many months go by. She'll be like, brother, no, I love you. And she really means that. And when I first had the idea for this book, and I had her on my podcast about 3 years ago, this is after I finished recording, and we had spent a whole 90 minutes going over her book, Love from the Vortex, which is a book that y'all need to get. Lots of great poetry in there. I said, hey, sis, like I got this book that I'm thinking about, and I would be honored if you could be my forward writer. And she barely knew who I was. But at that moment, she's like, yo, I got you. Brother, I got you. And the fact that she had so much faith in me at a time when I was still trying to figure out what this book would eventually become meant the world, man. And those are the kind of people that I try to surround myself with. People like yourself, like Lorena, like many others who are about this work and understand the importance of community and how community is important in ensuring that we are going hard in this pursuit for liberation and justice. We can't do this alone. There are times where we're not feeling ourselves. There are times where we're just not up for it. But guess what? There's someone there that's going to pick you right back up. And Yolanda is that person for me. So if I had a chance to have dinner with anybody, I would say her. So that's my answer.
Great pick. Shout out to Dr. Yolanda Celie Ruiz. Um, Doing amazing work and somebody that we can all learn from for sure.
Yes, sir.
What's your message of encouragement to the audience?
Message of encouragement. I would say just one day at a time. Take it one day at a time. There are many problems that are going on around our world, and we want to try to fix them right away. But most of these problems are marathon problems. So, in understanding that, you got to do a little bit each day, one brick at a time, one day at a time, and you'll eventually get there. So, that's what I had to do for this book. There were days where I was ready to quit, bro. It took me 3 years to write this book.
Wow.
3 years with multiple revisions, multiple peer editors. So I mean, y'all were part of that peer editing process, and
That's right.
I
That's
appreciate the
right.
feedback that y'all gave because
Man,
it
I done
forced me to
forgot.
do, yeah, it forced me to do more research, which was helpful for the Latinx perspectives chapter, which I'm very proud of because we got some incredible stories in that chapter where we talk about a lot of things. But I would just say to folks, man, just one day at a time. Give yourself grace. If you don't, just give yourself grace too, because some days you're just not going to have it. That doesn't mean that you're a horrible person. It just means that the next day it's going to be different. Just turn the page.
That's right. That's right. Listen, my people, the book is coming out probably around November. Stay tuned. Learning to Relearn, Supporting Identity in a Culturally Affirming Classroom. Brother Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, an amazing educator, making an impact all over the place. Hey, if y'all don't know, if y'all don't follow, you better tune into Identity Talk with Brother Kwame. Always has amazing guests,
Yes.
great topics, great content to support your professional development. And he's also published other books. So where can folks follow you if they want to connect with you personally, or they want to learn more about your works? Where can they follow you?
I mean, many places, but I think the easiest place to find me is at my website, identitytalk4educators.com. So that's the number 4 in that URL. You'll find all my social media connections. As far as social media platforms that I frequent, I would say Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter/X. But definitely hit me up there. And if you want to get a sneak peek at what to expect from this book, we have a website that is accessible right now that
Uh-oh,
has all the
exclusive,
chapter titles
exclusive.
and free resources for you to access right now. You can access them right now at learningtorelearn.com. So if you go there, there's a link for you to buy a copy of the book. But if you're someone that's still wondering, what's this Learn to Relearn book about? Scroll through the website and you'll get to see what each of these chapters are, the different book recommendations I have, podcast recommendations, as well as some activities that you can do with your students, especially during the first month of the school year that's coming up.
There you have it, folks. No excuses. Go do what you got to do right now. Support and follow Brother Kwame. Hey,
Yes,
thanks for
sir.
being here. Always a pleasure to connect with you, man. You know, you got love from us here at Multicultural Classroom, man. We will continue to be behind you in the work that you're doing, man. Thank you, Kwame. Thank you for being who you are.
My listen, same words I could share with you all. Man, y'all inspire a lot of people, especially as a married couple. The way y'all work together, the way y'all support each other, man. Man, y'all providing a blueprint for a lot of people, man. So I'll make sure you know that.
We appreciate that. Peace and blessings.